Welcome back to my channel. Wow. Is there I'm just speechless. I was just reading an article about former Liberal Party MP Julia Banks, and she's releasing a book, and it's pretty damning to the Liberal Party. This whole culture about the treatment of women is about to be slammed. What it's shocking. So let's look at the report first from the ABC, and then let's look at the excerpt from the books. There's an excerpt of her book being published. This book, I think, is going to be a very big seller. One of the allegations is that a coalition minister slid his hand up her thigh. So this is from the ABC. So this is written by Jade McMillan. So it says, in an extract from her book, published in today's Good Weekend, Miss Banks alleged an unnamed coalition minister slid his hand up her inner thigh during a function at Parliament House around a year after she was elected in 2016. Wow. For a minister to do this in the Prime Minister's wing, which was full of coalition MPs, he had to be astoundingly brazen. I found it unbelievable and I froze. She resigned after Malcolm Turnbull was rolled as the Prime Minister. She later contested the seat of Flinders as an independent and was unsuccessful. So when Scott Morrison first became Prime Minister, she resigned. She described the period between the leadership change and her decision to move to the crossbench as the most distressing, gut-wrenching period of her life, her career. After the 2018 leadership coup, that installed Scott Morrison as Prime Minister, I felt the full brunt of a culture of fear and silence underpinned by sexism and misogyny. Wow. She accused Mr. Morrison of a Trumpesque-like tone. Yes, Trumpesque tone. Yes, that's what we've been saying, to try to dissuade her from announcing that she would not be recontesting her seat. During that period, Morrison was like a constant menacing background wallpaper, imperceptibly controlling his obliging intermediaries to do his work for him. Now, Prime Minister was not aware of the allegations. He absolutely rejects the claims about the nature of his conversations with Miss Banks. The Prime Minister was disappointed in Miss Banks' decision to quit the Parliamentary Party and had several conversations with her to understand what she was going through, to see what support could be offered before she made her decision. That included support for personal leave so she could take time to recover from what was the upset many people suffered during that time. Several of Miss Banks' colleagues had similar conversations. The statement said Mr. Morrison was not aware of any allegations of sexual harassment Ms. Banks had faced, and that any such behaviour was completely inappropriate. Also pointed to a review of Parliament's workplace culture being carried out by the Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins in response to a former staff member Brittany Higgins' allegation that she was in a ministerial office. This report has made some significant findings and recommendations to improve the workplace. Right. So, wow, this book is going to be unbelievable and really damning to the government by the looks of it. So it said she will release a book about her time in Parliament, alleging she was touched. She also accused the Prime Minister's office of making her out to be a weak, over-emotional woman. Wow. Okay? So this is the Good Weekend. So this is the excerpt. Who's going to look after your kids? The question was put abruptly and unashamedly, the interviewer's tone aggressive. You're constantly travelling and away for work. I was taken aback, but remained zen-like as I replied, my kids have grown up with both their parents working. They're self-sufficient, older and... Exactly. How old are they? The interviewer interrupted impatiently. She fired her questions down the phone like bullets, demanding efficient replies. Still somewhat zen-like, I replied, in their late teens. Good. How old are you then? She said. Zen switched to incredulity. Am I really being asked this question? But I answered 52. Well, you're too old then. And with that, the conversation concluded. I'm sure this experience would have not been surprising to women who started in the workforce of the 70s, 80s or 90s, but this conversation, one of a series of phone calls and coffee meetings to be completed by anyone seeking Liberal pre-selection, occurred in 2015. The interviewer was one of the many party members who had voting rights in my pre-selection. Wowzers, wowzers, wowzers. Asking inappropriate questions. When I became MP the following year, people were split between being curious, admiring, and horrified that I'd made such a career change from corporate law, where I had held senior in-house legal counsel and executive director role at a range of global companies for more than 2 decades. Many commented along the lines of, "That's a big call. Why leave a perfectly good, high-paying career?" Several asked me outright, why do this now at your age? A key factor in my decision was actually related to my age. Because of my years of work in the corporate world, my financial security was sorted, and I could take this risk. I was genuinely curious to see what it was like on the inside of politics. I'd always integrated advocacy, particularly regarding diversity and gender equality, into my business life. And now the Liberal Party was publicly calling for more women. I don't know how many times I was told I was not up to the job by party members, local branch officials, and senior Liberal Party operatives. Its values of individual enterprise resonated with me. I saw leaders in the party, people like Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop, whose socially progressive and economically conservative views aligned with mine. And I thought this might give me a broader platform from which to continue my advocacy on important community and societal issues, including gender and cultural equality. So in my early 50s, and for the first time, I joined a political party. Entering politics was like entering another world, one stuck in time, so deficient in trust and rational judgment that it would occasionally astound even the seasoned corporate business-trained outsider. I felt like I was an extra in a TV series, a hybrid between Mad Men and the House of Cards. Who is going to look after your children? The interview was not a quirky one-off aberration. It was the tip of a very big iceberg of brutal, overt, conscious bias as opposed to more polite, unconscious variety I'd experienced in my corporate career. And in my opinion, still that is just none of their business, to be honest with you. When I joined the Liberal Party, I was approached to run for pre-selection for the marginal seat of Chisholm in Melbourne's East. I was regarded as unwinnable, as it had been held by the ALP for close to 18 years. I was told with an air of certainty, you won't even win pre-selection because you're new to the party. One branch official, noting the sheer impossibility of victory, said, if you win the seat, they'll make you Prime Minister. It all sounded sensible and easy, but it was actually an intense period of networking, nighttime and weekend phone calls, constant meeting people. After I was picked as the candidate, I worked 2 jobs concurrently until the intensive 18-hour days of my day job as Chief General Counsel and Company Secretary of a large corporation, then campaigning in the remaining waking hours, became too much. I made the incredible, difficult decision to resign from the company for a few months before the 2016 federal election. I don't know how many times I was told in the lead up to that national vote that I was not up to the job in different ways by party members, local branch officials and senior Liberal Party operatives from the Victorian Division HQ. As a forum, an audience of the party faithful were told aggressively that I was inexperienced because she's new to the party. It was like a huge performance issue on my part. To be called inexperienced with my age and extensive career was borderline ridiculous, but the speaker demonstrated what he meant when he told me to my face, you're managing this like you're a effing CEO. Clearly, he felt my corporate leadership skills were a negative. I took it as a compliment. Wow. I mean, this book is going to be very interesting, I think. I was given advice on campaigning. You should campaign for better toilet blocks in the local shopping centre. Stop rabbiting on about the economy. Leave it to the big boys. Wow. You know what I would have told him? Go stick it. Another time, when I asked as the pre-selected candidate, when I'd be speaking at a Liberal fundraising event, I was told, don't worry, darling, we'll give you the raffle. I was given advice on campaigning. You should be campaigning for better toilet blocks in the local shopping centre. Stop rabbiting on about the economy. Leave that to the big boys. I was told I would be even a hopeless MP if I couldn't lie, and on one occasion in my own home, I was yelled at by a branch official for being a useless candidate and a pighead so loudly that my son came running downstairs to check if everything was okay. I was told by more than one federal MP that the Victorian Division HQ operatives had advised the federal campaign not to bother with me because she was useless and just a crazy corporate woman. 2 days after Christmas 2015, I received a phone call from the 20-something perennial unemployed Liberal man. He explained his heartfelt desire for me to stand down and give my candidacy to him because he was young and energetic and had party values in his heart and soul. As his final flourish, he said earnestly, "You can't campaign and win this while having such a big job and career. Someone your age wouldn't have the energy anyway." Astoundingly, after I was elected, this same young Liberal applied for a job in my office. I pretended to give consideration to his application, returned his call, and let him down gently. Now I wish I'd just sent him a text a la Dame Helen Mirren. When the 70-something Oscar winner actor was asked in 2017 what would she say to her younger self, she would say, say F off more and stop being so polite. On election day, a branch official arrived at my campaign office before staffing a voting booth and told another volunteer, "I suppose I should take an A-frame, but no one's going to vote for the old B anyway." I was incredulous that even on this day, these people in my own party were willingly assuming and or conniving for my failure. That night, together with my family, friends, loyal supporters and a team, we proved them wrong. This is horrifying. This is horrifying. I'm sorry. This is just disgusting. We won the unwinnable seat, and the only seat Liberals captured from the opposition Labor Party in the 2016 federal election. "You won us government," a senior minister told me. At my first midwinter ball at Parliament House, because I was new to the game, my husband and I got seated at a table largely with people we didn't know, including other MPs who, like me, had just been elected for the first time. Their partners also accompanied them. I'd barely sat down and done the artificial around the table introductions when a newly minted male MP from the opposition sitting across from me said, "Julia, I've been meaning to say to you, you must use a really strong hair dye." Undoubtedly, this was a dig at me being a woman of a certain age. For the record, my natural hair colour is regular dark brown, but I use a colour to cover the grey roots. Unashamedly, I thought afterwards that what I could have said in reply to the balding middle-aged MP was, "Well, at least I've got hair." Instead, I turned to the woman next to me who hadn't heard that little exchange. She'd be more polite, I thought, but I should have seen her first icebreaker question coming at me. "What electorate is your husband the MP for?" Was I in a 1950s movie rather than in the Great Hall of Parliament House in 2016? Get me out of here. But I replied surprisingly myself with the nonchalance, "I'm the MP here. He's my handbag, like you are to your husband." That probably caused an ouch moment for her, but again, the Helen Mirren approach would have made me happiest. During my first term, the then Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull appointed me chair of the Social Policy and Legal Affairs Committee and to the House of the Economics Committee. These appointments are prestigious and often seen as a precursor to ministerial appointments. An aspiring Attorney General MP with no law degree called me out of the blue after he'd heard whispers about the appointments of myself and the other female MP on the Economics Committee. "You should both be focused on your marginal seats," he bellowed down the phone, like a spoilt boy who'd missed out on the school prize. "We women learn to multitask in our old age. I think we can cope," I said in a tone that was a hybrid between being maternal and patronising with a hint of Helen Mirren. In early 2016, I found myself in a backbencher's MP office, Parliament House, for the first time of the newly formed House of Representatives Economic Committee. I was the only woman in the room. The meeting was prior to the scheduled party hearing, in which the appointed MPs across party lines would question and cross-examine the CEOs of 4 big banks. It was agreed that given my extensive corporate experience, which none of the others had, I would cover governance and workplace culture issues. When the meeting concluded, one of the MPs I was seated next to went to stand up and placed his hand on my bare knee. I was wearing a skirt, as if to steady himself for a second. Then he got to his feet, took a deep breath, and said with an authoritative tone of an expert in the field, which he's not, "Look, guys, the plan's all good except for one thing. I think I should do Julia's line of questioning." He said this. He avoided looking at me, instead looked around at the blokes in the room as if soliciting their consent. I stared at him quizzically, while still slightly taken aback by the bare skin contact, determined to force him to meet my eye. "Why?" I asked. "Oh, because I think if you ask those questions, it'll be a bit too burn the bra aggressive-ish." The whole room was silent. One guy staring at the carpet of his office, looking as stunned as I was, another nodding in earnest agreement, as if his mad colleague had just identified a key insight. Maintained my stare and stoicism and said, "Thanks, but I've got this." The nodders stopped nodding, looked surprised at my firm tone. The inquiry proceeded well, and there was praise, particularly from the corporate community, for my line of questioning, underpinned by my business knowledge. An Australian Financial Review headline read, "How Julia Banks Made ANZ CEO Shane Elliott Squirm Over ANZ's Blokey Culture." What comes with age is a certain resilience from the sense that you've seen it all, but I never felt that during my time in politics. I was always on high alert for what might happen next, particularly because of the power that some of the state-based leaders. By 2018, rumours abounded that they were mobilising to challenge me and other moderates at the next pre-selection, despite my having won the marginal seat that secured the majority government. Pre-selection relies on local party members' votes. Suddenly, I was seeing increasing numbers of new members signing up in my electorate. When I called them, many hung up or didn't even know who I was. A few confessed that they weren't really sure why they joined, except that they did it for Gladys New, the woman who was to be my successor, who was openly supported by another federal Victorian MP. When I rang to challenge this MP about this situation, he aggressively said, "Let me interrupt you there. This is a very damaging phone call for you." I was incredulous. I turned the conversation around to end things politely, but of course I should have followed Helen Mirren's advice. One night in Canberra during sitting week, I was lying awake until the early hours, unable to sleep, turning over and over in my mind about the implications of an incident that happened only a few hours earlier. The incident was minor compared to many of my past experiences, an incident that, being a corporate lawyer, I would only classify as an unwelcome sexual advance, if that. I've been an MP for around a year, and this was my first experience of hanging around the house into the night, waiting for the bells to ring for a vote. Sorry. It was getting late, and all the coalition MPs were invited to the Prime Minister's wing for drinks and snacks. I was seated on the couch making conversation with a female MP. After a while, a male minister came and sat down on my right. I turned to acknowledge him and flinched slightly at the smell of alcohol on his breath. When he asked, not really expecting an answer, "How are you, Julia?" Within minutes, this was followed by a hand-on-the-knee manoeuvre. It was more than fleeting and certainly not accidental. His hand landed just above my knee and slightly edged and deliberately to my inner thigh and then further up my leg. The only saving grace was that this time I was wearing pants, not a skirt, and bare legs. For a minister to do this in the Prime Minister's wing, which was full of coalition MPs, he had to be astoundingly brazen. I found it unbelievable, and I momentarily froze. Without pausing, the minister got up from the couch, went over to say something to a couple of other people metres from where I was sitting. Despite my momentarily state of shock, I left my seat, walked over to stand beside another female MP. I whispered something along the lines of, "Can you stay?" He made a move on me, talked to me. When he came over to interrupt us, I moved away again. The whole incident was soon over. Wowzers. Far worse has happened to millions of women, including myself, in terms of unwelcome attention or inappropriate touching. In some ways, I saw it as a transient and trivial incident, and I put it down to a ridiculous drunken moment by an entitled narcissist, a kind of power move. But this was a senior MP, a cabinet minister in the Prime Minister's wing. I kept thinking over to myself, over and over, if he's prepared to do that to me, a 50-something corporate lawyer MP in that room, what must he do to women he has real power over? This is freaky. This is really freaky. This is unbelievable. And I object to the fact that they're able to drink at their workplace, because nowhere else are you able to be drunken at your workplace. And don't forget that it would seem that was when they were doing voting as well. So anyway, I have huge issues. On the other side of the 2016 election campaign, I found Malcolm Turnbull a leader with whom I shared core values and beliefs, and more importantly, someone I could trust. With his own business career and achievements behind him, it was obvious that his purpose for his power and leadership in politics was the bigger benefit of society. On a personal level, the empathetic his support he gave me during the citizenship crisis of 2017 was particularly extraordinary. But after the August 2018 leadership coup that installed Scott Morrison as Prime Minister, I felt the full brunt of a culture of fear and silence underpinned by sexism and misogyny. 3 months between the August 2018 leadership change and my decision to quit, the Liberal Party represented the most distressing, gut-wrenching period of my entire career. Wow. I remember sitting next to the then Foreign Minister Julie Bishop in the party room in Parliament House, minutes after she'd lost her tilt for leadership during the coup. Morrison rose to his feet, his buoyancy at his newfound status making him oblivious to the bloodshed that had just been caused. He addressed the party room with a weird combination of evangelical fervour and footy coach rhetoric. He pointed excitedly to the framed photographs of all the previous male leaders and prime ministers of the party, and in a final flourish added with an attempted worldly tone, "And one day there will be a woman there." Bishop, renowned for her impeccable combat lines, metaphorically pushed Morrison off his pulpit with her quiet quip, "In which century?" The weekend after the leadership coup, the new deputy leader, Josh Frydenberg, called me, barely concealing his elation that it had meant a significant elevation in his career trajectory. He indicated strongly that I'd be up for an assistant ministry. "What would you like?" he asked. I issued supportive statements about Turnbull and Bishop and clarified that I'd voted for Julie Bishop in the first round, voting to correct a misleading media report that indicated I voted for Morrison. By the end of that Sunday, Frydenberg called me again. Scott said, "Not this time." This wasn't a surprise for me. I hadn't voted for Morrison. I didn't owe him anything, and I couldn't be bought. Nonetheless, I pressed on. On Monday morning, working from home, I asked my staff to search for photos of me and the new PM and Frydenberg to post them on social media with the caption, "Looking forward to working with this leadership duo to continue to deliver." Then I went on a brisk walk to clear my head. As I was walking, I checked social media. As soon as I saw my post staring back at me, my head became very clear indeed. There was no way I could be true to myself to stand along Morrison and campaign with him. It was that point in the park I decided I was not going to recontest the next election. The party and the people within it had become mired in internal political entanglements, swarming with irrational views. The general behaviour I had observed during my short tenure with the party since 2015 had been magnified during the coup. Namely, the deals, the misconduct, the tactics, the treachery. I distrusted far more people in the party than I trusted. But I still fully intending to fake it. Stay under Morrison's leadership until the next election. You don't have a successful corporate career without having to toe company line from time to time, and this has to be reflected by you as a senior executive leader or director. I instructed my staff to delete the post. I tried to reach Morrison through other ministers. After unsuccessful attempts to speak to him directly, he finally called me a few days later, just a few hours after his new ministry had been sworn in. "Julia, I am the Prime Minister," Morrison said to me in a Trump-esque tone, enunciating every word with a full stop emphasis, as if I'd missed the news cycle. He wanted to dissuade me from announcing that I wouldn't be recontesting my seat. An announcement so close to the coup would make him or his government look bad. If I was going to make an announcement, he or his team wanted at least 2 months. I wanted to do it straight away. He persisted, telling me they needed to plan the media rollout. A delayed departure could fly under the radar, be positioned as the cliche. She's leaving for personal and family reasons. That would be better suited to their narrative. In the tone of someone about to lose their temper, he said, "At least give me 24 hours, to which I grudgingly agreed. On August 29, 2018, I released a statement announcing I would not be standing for re-election, referring to the poor treatment of women across the political divide. It didn't take long for the reprisals and retribution to begin. A well-meaning senior minister called me and said I need to find myself a good lawyer. But I was a lawyer, and I knew I'd done nothing wrong. I found myself being diminished in persuasive ways by the stereotypical sexist narrative that I was everything from emotionally weak to precious to an aggressive, attention-seeking bully bee. Because I was loyal to Turnbull, it was stated by the Murdoch media that I was Turnbull's puppet, acting for revenge under the guidance of his invisible hand. I was called Turnbull's whore on social media and in vile anonymous correspondence. Emissaries who were obviously seen as close to me were sent to me to seemingly just talk. But really their objectives was to make me stop talking. Meanwhile, there was a wider generated abuse from no-caller IDs on social media, in coordinated letter writing campaigns to my office and to the press. Most of it was vile that my staff and I spent an inordinate amount of time filtering phone messages with deleting posts. When I became an independent, I received high-level abuse and death threats classified as low-level by police. On advice, we had to monitor these messages, so the agonising process became daily, if not hourly, ritual. Isn't that interesting that this is a politician getting death threats on a daily basis and it was deemed low level? I'm just saying. I noticed that two words kept popping up in abusive comments. Shut up, they appeared in various forms. Shut up, B, STFU, just shut up already. Shut up, go back to the kitchen. I'm sick of listening to you. Shut up and take your HRT. They were not all just unknown trolls and keyboard warriors. Many were happy to identify themselves. A quick internet search identified a number as party members and friends of other party members. Their aim was to silence me. Wowzers! This is shocking. During this period, Morrison was like a constant menacing background wallpaper, imperceptibly controlling his obliging intermediaries to do his work for him. I'd find out from various reliable sources that during the agreed 24 hours before I released my statement, there was intense backgrounding from the Prime Minister's office and other senior Liberal sources to the media that I was weak, over an emotional woman who had not coped with the coup week. Party leaders added to this narrative in radio, TV interviews within hours of my media release. Morrison declared in a news conference, "What is important right now is Julia's welfare. My first concern is for her welfare and well-being. What am I doing right now? I'm supporting Julia and reaching out to Julia and giving her every comfort and support for what has been a pretty torrid ordeal for her." He just kept using my first name as if we were somehow close friends or colleagues, which we weren't. As if he was always ringing me personally to check in, which he wasn't. I was the ultimate PR deflection at my cost, and a template he has used again and again to address what, in his mind, is the woman's problem in the context of a political situation. One dark, rainy Melbourne Friday night, weeks later, I was meant to be going to the footy game at the Melbourne Cricket Ground with my family. Halfway there, I knew I wouldn't be able to concentrate on the match. Instead, I dropped my family off at the front gate, at the front of the ground, trying to reassure them. I did a U-turn, started the drive back home. Recent events were spinning in my head. I'd spent the day captive in my own home, with photographs and the Australian Federal Police parked outside my home, who in their different roles were both fueling and protecting me from the attacks and the abuse. One of the photographers had tried to follow us to the football. As I drove home, alone in the heavy rain, my phone rang. The caller's tone was bullying, short and swift, and coldly calculating. It was Morrison. I'd been trying to speak to him all day. I wanted to tell him directly to get his bully boys to back off. He'd made offers that he'd been made before by his MRCs, including Frydenberg. He offered to send me to New York to work as a United Nations delegate, all the expenses paid, for months in a lavish hotel at taxpayers' expense. I declined. He offered to negotiate with Bill Shorten, the then opposition leader, for a pair. A parliamentary pair is when two political parties rebalance their numbers for voting when an MP is absent from chamber for personal, parental, or sick leave reasons. It could effectively mean that I'd be on unlimited sick leave or, more unlikely, unlimited mental health leave for the remainder of the term. The fact that this would align with the emotionally, mentally unwell narrative was not lost on me. I am not sick, I said. The Victorian Party forces wanted, as one Liberal said in text message, to put me under so much pressure that I leave. I was told that they didn't care that this would trigger a by-election. As they were more concerned, I'd use parliamentary privilege to out them and their behaviour. Morrison wanted me out too, but he needed my vote. This merger of the two forces formed one brutal force, and they had different objectives but wanted the same outcome. They wanted me silenced. That night, another feeling of unstoppable determination and resoluteness took a firm hold in me. I wasn't going to limp out of Parliament with a benign valedictory speech, feigning my unfettered loyalty to the party and its leaders. This force planted a seed of something I hadn't previously contemplated, that I could free myself and see the rest of my term out as an independent. It remains in my view that the Liberal Party has reached the point of no return for its self-described broad church. The moderate voice has been drowned out to the party, and the party is firmly a Christian conservative right-wing party. My vision is that a minority government with moderate, progressive, sensible, centrist independents holding balance of power will be the only circuit breaker to the paralysis and political football the major parties have created. Only this will allow real action on matters such as climate change and gender equality and allow our country to thrive. This was her video.
The gift of time and reflection has provided some clarity regarding the brutal blow against the leadership. Led by members of the reactionary right wing, the coup was aided by many MPs trading their vote for a leadership change in exchange for their individual promotion, pre-selection endorsements or silence. Their actions were undeniably for themselves, for their position in the party, their power, their personal ambition, not for the Australian people who we represent, not for what people voted for in the 2016 election, not for stability, and disregarding that teamwork and unity delivers success. The aftermath of those dark days in August then acutely laid bare the major parties' obstructionist and compactions and internal games, all for political point scoring, rather than for timely, practical, sensible decisions on matters which Australians care about. Speaker, equal representation of men and women in this parliament is an urgent imperative which will create a culture change. There's the blinkered rejection of quotas and support of the merit myth, but this is more than a numbers game. Across both major parties, the level of regard and respect for women in politics is years behind the business world. There is also a clear need for an independent and whistleblower system, as found in many workplaces, to enable reporting of misconduct of those in power without fear of reprisal or retribution. Often, when good women call out or are subjected to bad behaviour, the reprisals, backlash and commentary portrays them as the bad ones, the liar, the troublemaker, the emotionally unstable or weak, or someone who should be silenced. To those who say politics is not for the faint-hearted and that women have to toughen up, I say this: the hallmark characteristics of the Australian woman, and I've met thousands of them, be they in my local community, in politics, business, the media or sport, are resilience and a strong, authentic, independent spirit. The Liberal Party has changed, largely due to the actions of the reactionary and regressive right wing who talk about and talk to themselves rather than listening to the people.
I remembered when this happened.
People before the party and act in the nation's interest authentically and constructively, effective immediately, I will serve as a member of this House of Representatives as an independent representative. Like the 3 female independent representatives, the new member for Wentworth, the member for Mayo and the member for Indi, sensible, centre, Liberal values are at the core of what I stand for. As a result of this political journey, I am grateful to have met so many wonderful people from across the political divide who I know will respect my decision and with whom I hope I will have enduring friendships. I am so proud to serve as a member of this House of Representatives with honour and respect because of the good people it represents, the people that the major parties have stopped listening to, the Australian people. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. So there was some clapping there because, so it says on the November 27, 2018, Julia Banks announced her decision to become an independent for the remainder of her term. In May 2019 election, she unsuccessfully ran against Health Minister Greg Hunt for the federal seat of Flinders. She now runs her own consultancy business, is a keynote speaker on leadership, workplace culture, governance and risk management, and holds non-executive advisory positions. So she's releasing the book. So the book is out Wednesday, and this was an extract from Power Play, Breaking Through Bias, Barriers and Boys Club. It's going to be $35 and it's out on Wednesday. So here's the questions for you. It's question time. What are your thoughts about that excerpt? To me, it was pretty damning, and with what we know with the Brittany Higgins allegations and how that has been handled, there is a horrible culture, particularly that has been pointed out in the government. As I said, Nicole Flint, who has been so anti Friendly Geordies or Jordan Shanks and talks about being misogynists and all of that sort of stuff, criticising the way that he treats women. She probably needs to look in her own party and start calling them out as well. But thank you for joining me. Tell me what you think in the comments below. It's pretty damning. And I tell you what, she was one strong woman to endure all of that. You have my respect, Julia Banks. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you again.